Hey guys, what is going on? My name is Dabe and welcome to this video. Now, before I even kick things off any further than I already have, I want to mention to you guys, even though the title indicates that this video is mainly about Ironmen, there is actually something fairly important to you pet hunting mains in here. So first of all, I want to say a big thank you to Mr. Iron Aloha. Here's his Twitter on the screen. I'd recommend going over and following him if you don't already. And you know, if you're there, you might as well follow me for pointing this out. And he said he was okay with me making a video on this and actually testing it out, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. There was a minor change in the way that the underwater rewards shop works this week, and that change on your screen right now once again is the way that the seaweed spores are sold. So the seaweed spores are now only 50 mermaid tears instead of 20, which is actually pretty crazy because I'm going to show you guys in this video just how strong these seaweed spores are and why you guys should be trying this method as an alternative to charter crafting, because we all hate charter crafting as Ironmen. So let's go ahead and get into this. Alright, now first things first, if you want to be able to even attempt this method, it's pretty much essential that you actually get yourself flippers. These are not really hard to obtain. All you have to do is complete the Skippy and the Mogres mini quest and have 32 Slayer. Head over to a Slayer Master, buy yourself some fishing explosive. I'll show you guys a quick example here. Once you have the fishing explosive, you just head over to the AIQ Fairy Ring on Mudskipper Point, and once you are there, you just have to kill Mogres. It's very easy. They don't require any food, really, at least not at my level. Maybe if you're lower level they will. Just throw the fishing explosive in the water, Mogre pops out. You can even just auto-retaliate it to death if you want. It did not take me very long, and the drop is actually only 1 in 64. The reason you need these is because if you don't have flippers, you will only be able to walk underwater instead of running, which pretty much defeats the entire purpose of doing this method. Just got another one. Oh, that's perfect. Alright, so now I'm going to get into the meat of what this method is truly about. Basically, what you're going to be doing is the underwater thieving and agility method on Fossil Island. It's actually kind of a fun minigame when you get down to it, and it's actually fantastic XP. On top of getting you this crafting XP, you're also going to be banking thieving and agility XP, so that's fantastic. Or you can just focus on one or the other. I personally would just focus on agility because thieving is not very difficult to do. But what you're going after is you're just bouncing around from chest to chest. There's an arrow indicator on your mini-map that tells you where to go. And also this map right here, if I remember to put it on the screen real quick, is actually very helpful. You can find that over on the wiki page because it shows you all these helpful shortcuts of how to get from one area to another very quickly, therefore maximizing the amount of tears you can get per hour. Now what these mermaid tears are actually good for is you're going to be spending them on seaweed spores in the shop. Now it only costs 20 tears now instead of 50, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, which is extremely helpful because that reduction in cost is fantastic for those of you who don't have seaweed spores in the bank. Now alternatively, if you're like me and you've either camped fossil and wyverns or you do your occasional slayer task for them, this part of the video is a bit irrelevant. But still, regardless, this crafting method is very OP, and if you don't have seaweed spores, this is how you have to camp them. It's kind of a fun little minigame, and I personally found some enjoyment in it, even though it was a little bit click-intensive. Also, you have to be extremely careful that you don't run out of oxygen while doing this, because if you do, you will actually wash up ashore, and you will lose all of your tears. So it's very, very important that you make sure that you pay very close attention to your oxygen levels. Just find pufferfish when you can. I tried to catch them while I was going in between the different things that I was thieving from. So if you ever find yourself getting low, don't be afraid to just teleport out, because it's much better to teleport out and waste a little bit of time like that rather than lose all of the tears that you just spent time gathering. Alright, so that only took us about 4 to 5 minutes. I'd lean on 5 if it's your first time doing this. This is my first time doing this too, but I got kind of lucky with the chest bounce. So let's say 4 minutes. And we got 21 mermaids tears and 21 glistening tears. So if we go over here and we trade Marion, we can actually pick up a seaweed spore for 20 of our mermaid's tears. And on top of that, we can actually also go to training over here, and keep in mind I am actually 86 agility while doing this, but we can actually turn in all of our things for 4.6k XP. It's technically more efficient to do both skills, but I don't really mind because I want to get my thieving through Pyramid Plunder. But 4.6k agility XP in just about 5 minutes at my level. That's pretty crazy. This comes out to between 56k and 70k agility XP per hour, which is, that's nuts. I mean, 56k is on the low end of it, and that's still really good XP at 86. So that's fantastic on top of getting the seaweed spores, which I'm now going to plant and show you guys just why these things are so fantastic. Important to note that in this area you actually can use your fishbowl helmet, so I'd recommend doing so anytime you're on a farm run for these things. I don't know why it doesn't let you use it in the other area. I guess it kind of makes sense because they don't want it to be too easy. But we're going to go ahead and plant these seaweed spores, and I'll show you guys what we get when we come back. I want to preface this by saying I was really dumb and forgot to actually pay to protect my seaweed. It costs 200 emulates per, which is, I guess for some people, probably a lot, but I have a lot from camping fossil island wyverns, as you can also tell by the amount of seaweed spores I have in my inventory. Now that being said, you should definitely, at the very least, add seaweed spores to your herb runs, because seaweed spores only take about 35 minutes to grow. It's actually 7 ticks of 5 minutes, so if you're doing it every herb run, then they'll definitely be grown by the end of that. And you can actually get anywhere from 3 to 74 giant seaweed per patch, which is completely ridiculous. That's going to completely offset the amounts of buckets of sand that I will show you guys later. You will probably still be able to gather buckets of sand faster, and it's obviously more of a campable resource than the seaweed is, which is a little bit unfortunate, but you can definitely bank a lot of crafting XP by doing this, and it's a much easier alternative and a much more AFK alternative, in my opinion, to the charter method. Now, in the beginning of this video, I mentioned there's something included in here that is very relevant for pet hunting mains and pet hunting Ironmen all the same. The chance of getting the Tangleroot pet from this is actually better than the chance of getting it from magic trees. Chance of getting Tangleroot pet from this is 1 in 7,500 as confirmed by ModAsh on Twitter. That is crazy. 1 in 7,500 for something that takes 35 minutes to grow. Start buying these spores, because that is just freaking ridiculous, man. Now, I'm not sure if I mentioned this already, but the reason giant seaweed is so amazing is because it doesn't just count like regular seaweed. You might be thinking, oh, 34 seaweed, who gives a shit? That's completely irrelevant. Every giant seaweed actually counts as 6 soda ash, rather than just the 1 that you'll be getting from a standard seaweed. So that 34 giant seaweed that I just picked, which is an awful run because one of mine even died, and this is only half of the max cap you can get, is actually the equivalent of 204 soda ash, and you can do these runs basically twice per hour. So that's pretty crazy. So right here I'm going to show you guys how you're actually going to be collecting the buckets of sand for this method. The entire idea of this is to avoid charters, so I'm going to go ahead and start my stopwatch and tell you guys exactly how long this takes. So the idea behind this method is to have buckets ready in your bank, teleport to your POH, and make your POH in Yanil, and make it so that when you teleport right outside. You can see that the sand pit is actually right here. Once you're at the sand pit, just AFK. The way I'm getting back to the bank is actually I'm using a Xerix talisman. I know there's a close teleport to a bank from the new quest, the new vampire quest, so you could actually use that. And each inventory should take you from going to the bank to back to the bank again, about 50 seconds or so, meaning that you can get roughly 1,900 buckets of sand per hour doing this method. Now, that's, for me, it's probably going to be a little bit less, because if you don't have a construction cape, you're going to need to have teleport runes to get to, you know, so a little bit less maybe, but still, that's a lot of buckets of sand per hour. You're going to be getting these a lot faster than you are going to be getting the seaweed. And now, for the fun part. So as you can see here, 3 giant seaweed, and the rest of my inventory is just buckets of sand. Super glass make, that's a lot. That's a lot of molten glass. Now, alternatively, if you do 4 and 24, you really can't because you have the Astral Runes. You can be getting a bit more per inventory, but I'd rather do it like this. Now you can set up your bank too, where if you remove the Astral Runes and then you fill up your bank so that nothing else can go back into it, it'd be really easy just to withdraw. All you do, take out 3, fill up your inventory with buckets of sand, rinse, repeat with the spell, bank it, over and over again. That's all you're going to be doing. And just look at all that molten glass you can make per cast. That's actually pretty crazy. This is the first time I've actually tested this out, since I bank most of my XP passively through PVM things. But I remember how much I hated charters when I was grinding up my crafting to get my amulets and all that stuff. So this is definitely an alternative that I probably would have picked. Now here's the fun part of the video where I get to ask, who noticed what happened in the last clip? When I cast this, look on the ground under me. There's so much molten glass that doesn't actually all fit in my inventory. So there's 2 ways of actually accounting for this, and I just noticed this. I asked a friend of mine, his name is Kurt, you guys probably know him from a lot of my videos, what he did. He said he usually just waits until there's a full inventory with the glass on the ground to pick it up, because he's, I imagine, worried about saving his Astral Runes. But what you could do if you're willing to cast it a few more times would actually just be to take out 2 giant seaweed and 12 buckets of sand. I'm not necessarily sure which would be more efficient, but you can see even with just 2, I'm getting nearly a full inventory of glass. That is actually just ridiculous. That's 21 glass made from 2 giant seaweed. The reason that I mention it might not be more efficient to do the 3 seaweed per 18 buckets of sand method is because you will spend a little bit of time picking up glass, but I imagine overall that's probably going to be more XP per hour, so I'd probably recommend doing that, but try and do it at a bank where maybe no one else is around, which honestly the bank right above where the seaweed grows would be fine, because if you have it on the ground too long, other people will pick it up, and that would be kind of obnoxious. I was actually recording for so long that I ended up being able to farm another patch, because like I said, they only take about 35 minutes, so while editing this video together, I said, screw it, I'll just grow another one, just to see what happens. So this patch actually ended up yielding me 48 giant seaweed, or 47, rather, I know, haha memes, and that 47 giant seaweed, plus the one in my bank, ended up yielding me a total of 505 glass. That's a lot. That means that each seaweed with cast of super glass make was giving me 10.52 molten glass each. That's freaking ridiculous, because if by my estimate earlier that you'll be able to get about 100 seaweed per hour, that means you'll be able to get roughly 1,000 molten glass per hour while doing this. Now that obviously doesn't count the amount of time that it takes to blow the molten glass, so I can't really give you guys an exact amount of crafting XP per hour while doing this, and it's also fairly RNG based on how much seaweed you get, but based on my estimates, that's a lot of glass per hour. So in this video, I've shown you guys that you can get about 12 seaweed spores per hour from actually doing the underwater agility because of this change, and in addition to actually getting those 12 seaweed spores, you'll be able to grow roughly 4 per hour, each one resulting in roughly 25, which once again, it's kind of hard to give estimates with that because it is based on farming level, and it's a little bit RNG based on top of being based on farming level. But even if you're getting 100 seaweed per hour when you're actually doing this, even if you're just adding it on to your herb runs, which you're probably doing anyway, this is a lot of passive crafting XP that I'm sure you guys might just be passing up. So I would strongly recommend considering to do this method. Now, I know a lot of people are going to want exact XP rates, but like I said in the past two statements, I really can't give you exact XP rates because once you have the seaweed spores, that is the process of gathering the materials. You might already have some banked, so it's kind of hard to figure that out. But if you're counting from start to finish versus counting from when you already have the seaweed spores versus when you already have it in the bank, there's a lot of different things to give for XP rates, so I can't give it to you guys exactly, but you can see just how powerful this seaweed is, and you can see just how fast you can actually gather it, and you can also see in the background just how much extra molten glass is being produced every time I'm casting this spell. So I hope that that at least is some indicator this is something you should be doing and is a very strong alternative to doing charter crafting. Plus, this method is going to be fairly consistent once you actually have the seaweed banked, because you don't have to compete with other players, you don't have to fight other people for optimal rates, there's no, trying to race each other to these worlds, there's no worrying about whether or not you're doing it at peak times. All you have to do, gather some seaweed spores, even just do it for a couple hours, and then you'll have enough for probably a week worth of farm runs. Or just make sure you do your fossil and wyvern tasks to gather these seaweed spores, because these things are fantastic. I can't advocate it enough. I don't know how many times I said it this video. Feel free to go back and count. But if you guys enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate if you could drop a like on it, drop a sub, and please feel free to share it around. Help out your fellow Ironmen, and help out your fellow mains trying to hunt those stupid farming pets. I shouldn't say stupid farming pets, because it's one of the most fantastic pets in the game, and we all know that. Also, don't be afraid to check out the links in the description. I have a Discord down there. And if you feel like supporting me, feel free to check out those links as well. Thank you so much, and have a fantastic day, everybody. Happy grinding.